So that's George Benson's secret 4-note pattern. Thanks guys for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next lesson. No, really though, there's so much more to this pattern that I want to show you guys, including why this pattern works, how you can use it over different scales and any chord type. And then if you stick around to the end, I'm gonna show you some of the advanced details that Benson uses to make this really shine and become more than just those 4 notes. So starting off, we have this 4-note pattern, A flat, G, F, and E. The first thing you need to know here is that those first 3 notes lead us into that 4th note. So we have this tension, and that last note is our target note or resolution. And this is really coming from Charlie Parker's classic 2-5-1 line, right? 2-5-1 to C. We see that over the G7. In fact, I did a whole lesson on this called the most important 2-5-1 line that you can watch after this one if you need a refresher. And what's so great about this is that 4-note pattern can be used to basically target any note we want, just like we did in the last one. And Benson does this on both his recordings of Stella by Starlight. There's a live version and his recorded version. And so let's take a look at an example where he uses this for A minor. And he plays this. So in this case, we're using that 4-note pattern to get us to that E, which is a 5th of A minor. Fits in with the A minor chord shape, right? What's interesting here is you would never play some of those notes if you were just thinking about A minor pentatonic or any sort of A Dorian scale, because that G sharp. Now you may be thinking, if you're more advanced, oh, he's just playing over the 5 chord, like an E7 flat 9. But I don't even think Benson's thinking of that. The way he's using this is just to get to that E. So he has, it starts on C, and then is trying to get to another chord tone as a path to that. So sometimes it's easier to just think about this shape instead of adding on some more complicated theory in the moment of improvising. Benson's not thinking at that point, he's just playing. Now, one of the reasons that this 4-note pattern is so powerful is because it can be found in both the melodic minor scale and the diminished scale, which means that anywhere you can use either of those scales, which is pretty much anytime you're soloing, you can use this pattern. And so that's why we see it so many times. And it's not just Benson, we're gonna focus on his solos today, but all kinds of jazz, bebop artists use this pattern. So let's look at a lick that he uses over F7 sharp 11. So this is a pattern where you would use C melodic minor. And the idea that Benson plays sounds like this. It's a really cool idea for just a descending line. And it's actually very, very simple. We have that 4-note pattern. The way I want you to think about it is it's starting on the 7th. 7th of F7, E flat. Then we have 2 notes, A and G. And then we do the pattern again, E flat, D, C. But he doesn't go to B yet. He extends the idea by going up to F and then back down the 4-note pattern. So he's visualizing the 4-note shape, but he just adds a little bit of extension. And we're gonna look at some more variations like that in a second that you wanna stay around for. Same basic idea. There's a great example from Benson where he does this using diminished scale as well, which I just, for the life of me, can't remember what solo it's from, but it sounds like this. Now in this idea, he starts off strictly chromatically, right? All chromatic notes. When he gets to the 7th again, right? For both of these patterns, we start on the 7th. This time he doesn't do just 2 notes, he just goes into another 4-note diminished pattern. So the same exact shape, it's like 4-3-1 shift, then again 4-3-1 shift. Now that A fits over the D minor, but you could even continue this. Right? So that's what's so good about this pattern, is you can sequence it, you can add in other notes and then come back to it. It's so versatile. Now, if we were just using this 4-note idea, it might start to get a little boring, but Benson has a way of embellishing it and extending it, other than the one we just saw, that makes this even more useful for you. So I want to show you guys that. If we take that same pattern we did over F7, and we were starting on E flat, we would play it just going straight down, right? E flat, D, C, B as our end note. But what if we want to extend it a beat? We need to get that B on a certain note, like when the chord changes. What we can do is play the first three notes. Don't resolve yet with that fourth note. Add in two more notes to enclose the end note. So still think about it like that 4-note pattern. We just have an extra enclosure coming from below. Or same idea. It's same structure of these 4-note patterns. This variation is really common. Benson does it a couple of times in this solo, including another example where instead of starting on the E flat to target the 3rd of G major, he starts on B flat to target the 7th of G major. Let's listen to that version. Again, this is a great example because when we're doing this pattern over an F7, when would you play the E natural? If you're thinking about a scale, you would not play that, which means you're really not playing in a way that's similar to these jazz masters, and they clearly know what they're doing. So I want you guys to approach the music and improvising like they do so you can get that sense of freedom and creativity in your playing as well. So far, this 4-note pattern we've seen always starts on the upbeat, right? So we have 1, 2, and. We're starting on that and. You can also use this pattern on a downbeat when we use this variation with the extra enclosure. So let me show you 2 examples here, whether you want to continue downward on guitar or shift up in position. In this first one, we have this 4-note pattern that we saw many times before, and we just add in a D flat as this note. This is something that's very comfortable on guitar. You could use D flat, you could use D. It's almost a ghosted note that just helps us play one extra 8th note to resolve when we want to. The other version sounds like this, and this will shift us up in position in case we want to get higher on our fretboard. In that second example, we delay that resolution of the E to an upbeat, but it sounds really good to not always end our chord tones on downbeats. You hear Charlie Parker do this all the time, where we actually start on the downbeat with the half step below the chord tone. So you don't always want to target the chord tone on a downbeat. We need to have variation. That's what makes it interesting to the listener, and that kind of repetition of always doing something really starts to make it boring. At this point, you probably have a great grasp of what this 4-note pattern is and some variations, but let's see how we actually implement this in vocabulary, in 2-5-1 licks and playing over any sort of chord. How do we set this 4-note pattern up? How do we get out of it in a way that sounds musical and not really obvious? Because it is a pattern, it's very easy to make it sound boring and repetitive, and it's not used like that at all. And we'll see that in a few of these George Benson licks, again, from Stella Live and his Stella recording. This first example is over a minor 2-5 at the end of Stella, and it sounds like this. So the 4-note pattern within here, normally we've been doing it on one string, right? That's the best way to do it when you're first approaching this. But we can also do it where it's 2 notes per string. And that's the shape we're looking at now. Some of these more advanced details I told you about. But we don't have to immediately get there. We can do an enclosure for it, right? And the way Benson's setting it up ahead of that is like this. He encloses the D as if this is an F sharp 7, sharp 5, and then we start. I want you to visualize this F sharp 7, sharp 5, ending on the 5th of B minor. So that's the first one. This next lick works even when Benson lands on a wrong note. So let's listen to this. So what's going on here? We have again the F sharp 7, and this time we're ending on a B half diminished. And we start off with a very common type of line with that little pivot arpeggio. And that's the start of our 4-note pattern. this works, he continues the line, this works even though we shouldn't really be ending on a D sharp over B minor 7 flat 5. We would have expected a D. So this 4-note pattern is so powerful that even when you're ending on the quote wrong tension, it works because he continues right off of that into something that works over B minor 7 flat 5. So it's not so much about the exact note we land on when the chord changes at that moment. It's all about how you play from there. This third lick is my personal favorite. It feels really good over G7, and it's a great variation on that most important 2-5-1 line we saw earlier. So if you have a feeling that that lick is a little boring and dull, this will change your mind. On guitar, this lick is super comfortable. It fits so nicely over that G7 sharp 5. Slide, and we make this G augmented chord, and then we go back to this B flat. So that's that first opening part of the lick. Then our 4-note pattern to resolve. What you'll notice is that 4-note pattern comes at the end to get us into the resolution. And it's a very common way of getting to a resolution, even when the setup for that is different. It's just a common way of ending a phrase that if you don't know it and use it frequently, you're really missing out on a very main way that improvisers will resolve their lines. For the fourth idea, let's take a look at a longer line that breaks up that 4-note pattern into 2 notes on each consecutive string. So 2 notes on one and then 2 notes on the other. This will help us stay in position instead of sliding down. The 4-note pattern before tends to drift us downward, and sometimes we just want to stay in position. This is a great way of doing that. So staying in the same 5th position, we won't even move. Let's do another idea that's taking this 4-note pattern and breaking it up into 2 notes on one string, 2 notes on the other, this time for F7 sharp 11. So we had the F7 idea that really shifted us downward in position, remember? And now we're going to do one that stays right here in the 5th position. So as a guitarist, as an improviser, you need to be able to control where you are on your instrument range-wise. Are you going descending, ascending, staying in position? And when you get into a spot you don't want to be, you need to know how to get out of that spot. Let's listen to how this one sounds. In this one, that 4-note pattern is actually the same one we saw before with F7, E flat, D, C, and B, but we just break it up. 2 notes first here, E flat, D, and then instead of going right to B, we do another enclosure. So we extend it with that other variation. And he ends with that little B to D. Thinking very clearly of C melodic minor here. Another thing with this idea is it's very, very easy to play fast. Feels super comfortable. So if this was interesting to you guys, check out either of these 2 lessons, the most important 2-5-1 line, or some of my other Benson lessons. I have a whole playlist. And if you want to learn more from me, you can check out Chase's Guitar Academy. We have live classes 3 to 4 times every week. A bunch more lessons if you dig what I do here on YouTube. And I know you'll enjoy it. 14-day free trial. Nothing to risk. Hope to see you guys there. Look forward to teaching you.